Alright, here we go. Time to eat some crow. This is gonna be really hard to do without a mouth. I like to think of myself as a pretty open-minded guy. I try my best to temper my judgments and remain as unbiased as possible when watching movies and television. But I'm also not so deluded as to claim to have a perfect, impartial nature. Because there are times where I do jump to conclusions. In a world where there are more movies and TV shows than I will ever be able to watch in a single lifetime, I tend to be very selective with what I watch. But there are lots of other reasons I may disregard a film or series. It may have an actor I don't like, a writer I hate. The trailer may make it seem pandery to a particular demographic. It may be too mainstream for my syrupy hipster blood. Or it may just be a genre that I don't care for. But I'll be the first to admit that there are some times where I'm just flat out wrong. Where my preconceptions and overtly cynical nature misguide me and blind me to something that's really special. I have absolutely no problem admitting this, because I think it's very important to learn from your mistakes. And so in today's episode, I would like to talk about 3 examples where I misjudged something that was really amazing. When the Hunger Games books came out, everyone was talking about them. And then when the movies were released, they just became completely inescapable. And keep in mind, these movies came out over multiple years. So it wasn't like some passing fad that would be over in a week. Oh no, they shaped our very culture for a time. And I had to deal with this hype culture for what felt like forever. There were trailers running on loop every commercial break. There were signs and promos hanging up everywhere you looked. And even my English teacher in high school was having kids read it in class. So, naturally, having these films and books shoved down my throat at every turn started to grate on me. And I, for one, wasn't gonna be some conformist sheep who eats up mainstream media like the rest of the cogs in the machine. Clearly, I was a lot of fun to be around in high school. But it didn't help that the way the trailers were cut and presented made me cringe and roll my eyes every time I saw them. The 3-fingered salute, that dumbass earworm whistle, the romantic subplot. To me, it just seemed like yet another young adult movie designed to prey on teenagers' insecurities and their innate rebellious nature. Like another in a long line of failed studio attempts to create the next knockoff Harry Potter. But oh, how wrong I was. After having seen all 4 films, I have to say, they did a lot of stuff right. There was far more in it that appealed to me than I ever would have expected. It has a great dystopian depiction of the future, there's excellent political and social commentary, a really solid story that isn't afraid to get really dark. Oh, and how could I forget? Donald fucking Sutherland. I have loved Donald Sutherland for years, having first seen him in 1978's Invasion of the Body Snatchers, as well as countless other great roles. He is so perfectly cast as President Snow. Anytime the camera cut away from him, I would actually get a little upset. He brings so much underlying menace and intelligence to the character.
I told you what a fragile thing peace was. And still, like a child, you took pleasure in breaking it.
You asked me to convince you that I was in love with PETA. Haven't I at least done that?
Miss Everdeen, it's the things we love most that destroy us. I want you to remember that I said that.
Just incredible. Oh, and the bit about where he would have dinner with his enemies and poison all the drinks at the table, including his own, just to get them to trust him. But then he would take the antidote that would give him bleeding sores in his mouth, thus leading him to wear flowers on his lapel to mask the smell. I just love that! That is such great character building. But Donald Sutherland isn't the only actor doing a great job in this. Stanley Tucci, Toby Jones, Lenny Kravitz. Holy shit, I didn't know that was him. He did really good in this. Even the character of Effie, who I rolled my eyes at the hardest in the trailers, turned out to be one of my favorite characters. So there was a lot that I was wrong about here. That said, the films aren't perfect. As much as I like them, they still don't come close to qualifying for my personal collection. Some characters are downright unwatchable and rob screen time from the more interesting characters. All the best parts seem to happen outside of the games, which means a majority of the films have very little engagement. Katniss isn't exactly an interesting character to follow, and suffers from a bad case of make way for the protagonist. And the romantic subplots do nothing but tarnish an otherwise very compelling story. At the time of writing this, I'm on season 8, so I've seen quite a bit of The Walking Dead. And if it wasn't for my boyfriend wanting to watch it with me, I probably would have never made it past episode 1. Before watching The Walking Dead, I thought it was just another show trying to take advantage of our cultural obsession with zombies. I heard stories about people sitting around in bars and watching it with a ton of people cheering and gasping every 5 seconds. I heard that it killed characters off left and right, which always pissed a lot of people off. To me, it sounded like the fans were just overreacting, and the writing was just poking the bear to keep viewing numbers up. Once again, though, I was very, very mistaken. The writing is completely the opposite, in fact. It's incredible. The sheer amount of subtle foreshadowing and beautiful character development is straight up addicting to watch and theorize about. I mean, even the intro sequences hold secrets. I love that kind of attention to detail. And the practical effects work is out of this world. And while their CGI and special effects leave much to be desired, the practical effects more than make up for it. It's really nice to see such a dying art getting the love and attention that it deserves. But what I love the most about The Walking Dead is it respects its audience. Time and time again on this channel, I've preached about how movies and TV shows don't respect their audience. But not The Walking Dead. Nothing is censored or watered down for the sake of appealing to a wider demographic, which was something I really didn't expect from a show this mainstream. I mean, they had the balls to actually kill children in this show. And they even show you that up front in the first episode. That earns you points in my book. It fully embraces its horror elements by showing the brutality of human nature. Not only in its blood-soaked violence, which I do appreciate, but also in the dialogue and the scenarios that unfold. It doesn't gloss over sensitive topics or taboo subject material. And it does this in order to show a horrifically realistic and threatening world post-apocalypse. Nothing is sugar-coated, which is really refreshing to see. It's so nice for a show to actually know that I'm smart enough to tie my own shoes, and not some mindless Neanderthal that has to be spoon-fed important plot points. It knows I can handle the depraved depths that it will plunge to, and so it doesn't hold back. And therefore, when a scene doesn't make sense or a particular individual is acting out of character, I return the favor and trust that the show is actually going to explain itself. And that trust is not misplaced. Everything, even scenes that seem mundane and pointless, had a purpose. This is how you build a strong relationship with your audience and avoid any jumping the shark moments. Like, well, this whole thing. I trusted this show so much that I could actually suspend my disbelief for something as outlandish and unbelievable as King Ezekiel and his tiger. And Carol's reaction was a perfect representation of the audience. I'm telling you, in any other show, this just wouldn't work. In fact, I found myself liking characters that also happened to kill some of my other favorite characters. And instead of being upset over them dying, I understood how it reflected their individual motivations and the story arcs that they were all going through, which made me like that they died. How insane is that? I've never experienced anything like that in my life. I actually found myself rooting for my favorites as well as the people trying to kill them. Seeing characters with very different ideologies and ethical stances clashing and trying to work together is really fascinating to watch. And even the side characters that really don't bring much to the show, I still can't complain about. Because I need them to be there so the percentage that my favorites will die goes down. So, unlike what I mentioned with the Hunger Games, I can't even complain about the characters I don't like. That is some next level writing right there. For example, there's this rule in filmmaking. If there's a gun in the third act, establish it in the first. The Walking Dead takes this concept and dials it up to 11. Sometimes they'll plant something that isn't even important until 3 seasons later. It's that kind of stuff that blows my mind. So it goes without saying that trying to predict anything in The Walking Dead is pointless. And that's really wonderful. No one is safe at any time, and nothing is what it seems. This makes every scene an edge-of-your-seat, nerve-shredding ballet of tension that is nothing short of beautiful to behold. Also, Negan. Oh, and Herschel. Oh, and I also really love... Right off the bat, I'm just gonna say that the Pirates of the Caribbean movies are not fine art, or redefining a genre or anything like that. It's not like they have deep social commentary or anything. They're just fun little romps themed around pirates. And once I adjusted my expectations and realized that these movies were just supposed to be harmless fun, it just sort of clicked. Now, I take every opportunity to take shots at Disney. I'm one of the few remaining people who don't adore and devour every single thing they put out like it's chocolate dipped in cocaine. I take issue with how they run their business and with how they're monopolizing the industry. And with that in mind, you can see how I came to the conclusion that the Pirates of the Caribbean was just another ploy to get rich quick off of the young and exploitable. That the mindless fun of the Pirates franchise was a sign of lack of thought and shoddy writing. I mean, it's a film franchise built on a defunct animatronic ride from 1967. How good could they really be? Surprisingly, really good. These films contain some really innovative and awesome character development that is showcased in some really fun ways. These two pirates lead you to believe that they exist only for comedic relief, which makes an intelligent viewer disregard them throughout the entire franchise. Because of this, it makes them a perfect vehicle for hiding a MacGuffin that would go on to be incredibly important in later films. Hell, they even flaunt this important object in front of the viewers time and time again, while still going unnoticed by many as simple slapstick goofs to keep the kids entertained. It was a really well-constructed background arc that I was kicking myself for not noticing. And it's a wonderful example of establishing the gun in the first act before using it in the third. There are lots of really rewarding moments like this, sprinkled all throughout the franchise, where an observant viewer could predict what would happen if paying really close attention. This brief shot of Barbossa's feet shown before his reveal, this shot revealing the Kraken's full form for only a brief moment, the music box on Davy Jones' organ. There are just lots of great bits of foreshadowing that I really enjoyed. But I think my favorite part of the Pirates franchise has gotta be Geoffrey Rush as Barbossa. I've been an avid follower of Geoffrey Rush's work for quite some time now, ever since I saw him in the House on Haunted Hill remake, doing a really good impression of Vincent Price. And here, anytime that he's on screen, it's a joy to behold. Honestly, Barbossa is my favorite character out of all these films. But he's not the only great actor giving it his all. Both Jonathan Pryce and Naomi Harris were excellent as usual, and Bill Nighy was perfectly cast as Davy Jones, who cheeses it up in all the best ways. Do you fear death? Why does he do that in every film he's in? Of course, the Pirates franchise did seem to briefly lose its way. On Stranger Tides was a truly awful film that did nothing but tread water for 2 hours and 17 minutes. However, all the movies fell prey to the make way for the protagonist trope, which I plan to make a full video dissecting at some point. Honestly, both Will and Elizabeth were kind of boring and box standard, which makes it a real shame that we spend most of the movies following their nonsense and watching it get people killed. No one gave a fuck about Will and Elizabeth's romantic subplot, and thus it wastes a ton of screen time. But overall, the movies are actually pretty remarkable. They didn't have to put this much effort in. They are movies about pirates after all, and yet they actually put a lot of effort into them. And it would be shameful for me not to acknowledge that. Alright, so there are 3 times that I've been wrong about film and TV. I think I'll start making these more often. I really had fun with this one. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to leave a like or a comment, or better yet, hit that bell down there. There's plenty more content like this on the way. So with that said, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.